Discovered my roommate's new boyfriend practically living in our house, suspect he's homeless, and now she's weaving a protective narrative against me. I've been renting this house with my longtime friend for about 2 months now. We're both on the lease, but I'm the one who paid the deposit and all the move-in costs, and I cover roughly 75% of our total living expenses. Yeah, I know, it probably sounds dumb, but my friend doesn't make much money and was in a rough spot. She couldn't have moved in here without being on the lease. We'd lived together for close to 3 years before this, and honestly, it had been fantastic. When I relocated to this new city, she already knew tons of people, and she really helped me build up a social life. I had absolutely no problem with the arrangement, at least not until now. Everything started to unravel when she suddenly and tragically lost her dog, who was basically like her child. Since then, she's been spiraling, drinking constantly, starting arguments, throwing around insults. We had more or less stopped speaking to each other by that time. Then about a month ago, she met some random guy. I don't know much about him, but every impression he's left on me has been, well, bad. 2 weeks ago, she got a DUI and this guy bailed her out. The next day, he came back to our house with her and stayed most of the day. Then he started showing up every day, basically camped out in the living room, strutting around without a shirt like it was his own place. I did my best to avoid them, ducking into my room or leaving altogether, and I never exchanged a word with him. Something about him just creeps me out. He's a big guy, probably about 6 feet 4 inches and pretty heavy. It isn't just his size, though, it's his whole vibe. It just feels off. 6 days ago, he spent the night at our house. Then the next night, and then again, and again. By the 4th straight morning, I had to say something. I told my roommate that it wasn't fair for her boyfriend to basically take over our house and stay so many consecutive nights. I told her that he made me uncomfortable, and her response was basically, "It's my house too, he's my boyfriend, I can do what I want." On the 5th morning, just yesterday, I noticed his toiletries had migrated into our bathroom. At that point, I confronted her again, pointed out our lease's very clear limit on long-term guests, 14 nights in a 6-month period, and said it seemed like her boyfriend was planning to stay longer than that. This is when things shifted, and a whole new red flag went up. Suddenly, my roommate started making comments like, "I feel threatened, and I feel unsafe, and I need my boyfriend here for protection." There's absolutely no truth to any of this. I've been going out every evening after work, not coming home till 11 or 12 at night, and I avoid all contact with both of them. The extent of my interaction with him was one night when I got home around 11, and found them both on the front porch smoking weed. He was, once again, practically in his underwear, and I simply asked him if he could put on clothes when he's in the common areas. That's all I've ever said to him. It seriously feels like she's gearing up for some sort of legal defense, like she's planning to tell our agent or the landlords that she feels threatened by me, so she needs her boyfriend around for protection when they inevitably tell her that her boyfriend can't stay. But here's the kicker: yesterday, her boyfriend rolled up at 4 p.m., while I was working from home, and stayed for the rest of the day and overnight again. It's become their routine now. He wakes up, goes to work, comes back here. He's basically living in our house. I got curious last night, when I came back home around midnight and saw his SUV parked outside. I peeked through the window and it was overflowing with clothes, all on hangers. It looked exactly like someone who's been living out of their car, absolutely stuffed with belongings. Maybe I'm paranoid, but it honestly seems like this dude is homeless and has manipulated my roommate into letting him move in. The drastic change in her language, the "I feel threatened" stuff, and "I need protection," is so out of character for her, it feels rehearsed. Like she's being coached. I talked to our leasing agent about what's been going on. I get along with her well. She's already noticed the boyfriend's car parked here every single day and told me she'd be messaging my roommate a reminder about the guest limits today. My fear now is that my roommate will start making up lies about me, telling the agent I'm making her feel unsafe and she needs her boyfriend for protection. I'm not too worried that she'll succeed in painting me as a threat, but I am concerned that the agent and landlords will look at all this drama and just end our lease early, deciding it isn't worth the trouble. And I really love this place. I don't want to move. I've already changed the Wi-Fi password, since I pay all the utilities, and locked up all my possessions, plates, cookware, silverware, you name it. At this point, I'm just out of ideas. I don't know what else to do, but I wonder if anyone else has been in a situation even remotely like this. Update 1. Maybe you know my story. I paid most of the bills to help my roommate out, and in return, she introduced me to a ton of new people and helped me build a social life, which was fantastic for a while. Then, this summer, everything changed. We upgraded from an apartment to a direct home rental. Just as we were settling in, her dog died unexpectedly and tragically, and it absolutely shattered her. Soon after, she started seeing this strange guy, and not long after that, she got a DUI. He was the one who bailed her out, and suddenly it was like he moved in overnight. His toothbrush was in our bathroom, his clothes were hanging in the closet, and his stuff was everywhere. He'd arrive with her around 3 p.m., spend the night, shower in the morning, leave, and come straight back most days. Together, they'd trash the kitchen and bathroom every single day. Cooking or showering meant cleaning up after both of them. No matter how much I begged her to stop, she refused, and our friendship crumbled into daily hostility. The landlord, who lived right next door, kept reminding her that the lease didn't allow guests to stay over more than 14 times in any 6-month span. Then my roommate started telling people she didn't feel safe around me, claiming she needed this guy around for protection. It was absurd. One day, I noticed his car was stuffed with clothes, dozens of hangers, shirts, pants, shoes. That's when I realized he didn't have another home, he was living with us. The kicker? We never signed a rental agreement between us, so I was stuck covering 75% of the bills while she and her boyfriend took over the house. She made it crystal clear she wasn't going to leave or break the lease because, honestly, neither of them could get a place on their own, and I was completely stuck. I started fighting back with the small things. I changed the Wi-Fi password, locked up all the pots, pans, and dishes, since they were all mine, and hid my laundry detergent and dryer sheets. They tried to carry on, no TV, no internet, using a battered $3 sauté pan and paper plates, but refused to leave. Thankfully, my friendship with the landlord worked in my favor. She was just as furious about him living at our house as I was. She sent a formal notice to my roommate, warning her that if her boyfriend stayed over the 14-day limit, we'd be evicted. My roommate feigned understanding, promising he'd be gone after day 14. But, sure enough, he was back on day 15. We had a monumental confrontation, which I filmed, and her boyfriend charged at me, tried to attack, but my roommate managed to hold him back. I almost hoped he'd hit me so I could get the cops involved, but instead, he just stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I consulted a friend who's a cop, but she said it wasn't quite enough to get a protection order. After that, while he stopped officially staying overnight, he still basically lived at our house, showing up at 3 p.m., leaving close to midnight. I was miserable. I nearly accepted that this would be my life until the lease ended next summer. Then, 2 weeks ago, everything changed. She screwed up and let him stay over again, and this time I had solid proof. I documented everything and sent it straight to the landlord. Within an hour, I got a text reading, "Woohoo! You're free." Then, right after, an official eviction notice hit both our inboxes. We had to be out by the end of October. We actually received the eviction notice while we were both at the same huge sports bar full of mutual friends. She stormed upstairs, screaming at me, cursing me out in front of everyone, ranting that I had gotten us evicted because I went whining to the landlord. Then she and her boyfriend ran next door to the landlord's house, panicking and begging, claiming she'd be homeless and couldn't afford an eviction on her record. She even tried to convince the landlord to just kick me out and let her boyfriend move in, blaming me for all the trouble. The landlord wasn't buying it. Instead, she made her an offer: avoid an eviction on her record if she agreed to break the lease, move out at the end of the month, and didn't let her boyfriend set foot in the house again. If he appeared even once, she'd issue a 7-day eviction notice. After that, my roommate and her boyfriend basically disappeared. I think they hoped disappearing for a bit would help, maybe let things cool down so he could come back to the house. But something must have changed. Maybe they found somewhere else or realized it was over. About a week ago, they finally showed up to gather her things from the garage. And just yesterday, my landlord told me that my roommate agreed to break the lease at the end of the month. Today, I signed a new lease myself, and on November 1st, I get my home back. Not sure exactly what lesson I'm supposed to pull from all this, but I do know I am ready for some peace, and ready for my home to be mine again. Update 2. I thought the rest of October would be a quiet countdown. She'd agreed to break the lease, I'd signed the new one starting November 1st, and all that was left was for her to get her stuff and go. I kept my head down, worked, came home late, tried to pretend the walls weren't still holding their fights. The last week of the month, she texted me a heads up that she'd be by with a friend to move things. That night, a U-Haul and his overstuffed SUV backed into the driveway like they were docking a boat. He hopped out first, barefoot in slides, and started rolling the back gate open like he lived there. I stepped onto the porch and said as calmly as I could manage, "He can't come inside." That was the condition. He smiled without looking up and kept walking. I hit record on my phone and texted the landlord one word: "Here." She lives next door, and she must have already had her shoes by the door, because within minutes she was on our lawn with a folded paper in her hand. She didn't raise her voice, just said, "You were warned," and taped a 7-day notice next to the handle. My roommate came out of the truck shrieking before the tape even stuck. He puffed up, took 2 steps at the landlord like he was going to get in her face, but stopped when she lifted her phone and said, "Try me." He pivoted toward me instead, then clocked my camera and thought better of it. They ended up hauling only from the garage that night. He pushed the U-Haul ramp like he was trying to launch it into orbit. She cried the entire time, not quiet tears, loud, performative sobbing, the kind where you make sure every neighbor knows how wronged you are. As the sun went down, he tried to wedge the fridge out of the kitchen. It's the landlord's fridge. My roommate shrieked at me that she bought it. I texted the landlord again. She walked in with a folder of receipts and the unbothered patience of someone who has raised teenagers. He said, "Whatever," and dropped it hard enough to slosh water out of the dispenser onto the floor. They left the ramp down when they drove off. It scraped the street so loud it sent a dog 3 houses down into a barking fit. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up with an essay-length text from her. I'd ruined her life, I'd taken her home. Did I know how evil I was? I didn't answer. 2 nights later, he tried to sneak back in. I'd unplugged the garage opener and zipped ties around the emergency release the day we got the notice. At 11:40 p.m., I heard the slap of his slides on the driveway and the soft clack of someone punching the keypad. Then the bang when the door didn't budge. He stood there long enough to smoke a whole cigarette and then tried the back door. I watched his head flick past the kitchen window like a weird parade float. I didn't move. I called the landlord and the non-emergency line and said a trespassed person was attempting entry. By the time a patrol car rolled by, he'd left. The landlord came over in her robe, changed the keypad code herself, and handed me 2 deadbolts in their plastic bubble packs. "Tonight," she said, and sat on my rug while I installed them, coffee mug still drying by the sink. On the 30th, she came with one friend, someone I didn't know, thin and quiet, who never made eye contact with me, and they loaded the last of her stuff from the garage. She texted to say she'd be back later for the things in her room. I told her she needed a civil standby if he set foot on the property. She ignored that and showed up with him anyway, right as I was microwaving leftovers, like we were still sharing a life and this was normal. The landlord must have been watching from her window, because the moment he crossed the threshold, she called it in. The cops walked him back out to the sidewalk and explained trespass like it was kindergarten. He argued. They asked for ID. He didn't have it. He became loud. His slide got caught on the front step and he stumbled, flailed out, and for a second I thought I'd get my wish from weeks ago. He'd catch himself on me and give me the excuse to end this with a police report. He didn't. They kept it boring. 2 officers stood in the living room while she boxed her room with shaking hands. He paced the curb, talking at his phone like he was narrating for a camera, using words like tyrannical and rights. One of the officers asked me if I wanted to do a formal no trespass order for him. I said yes. The landlord signed it and taped a copy to her fence. The room she left behind was worse than I expected. There were clothesless hangers still tangled from when he'd hauled them in. The blinds were bent, 2 slats cracked, where someone had yanked them shut hard. She'd taken the closet rod brackets for some reason, the little metal pieces that cost $3 at Home Depot. In the bathroom, there was a line of foundation smeared along the countertop like someone had been painting in a hurry and never came back. They took my shower curtain but left the rings. They took the shelf out of the fridge but not the food, which had a smell by then, a soft, sour sweetness that clung to the kitchen like regret. I took pictures. The landlord took pictures. She didn't say much, she just scribbled things on a clipboard. When we got to the front room, she put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed. "You're almost done," she said. Halloween night, the house was finally empty of them. I handed over my key to my own lock set so she could rekey the exterior doors officially, and then we sat on the porch handing out candy to a stream of toddlers in plastic masks. The house felt like a house again. When it got late and we ran out of Kit Kats, she walked home and I locked my door and played music in the kitchen for the first time in weeks. I stood in front of my oven and ate reheated pizza off a real plate, my plate, and didn't listen for the thump of size 13 slides on my hardwood. Every small sound was mine. November 1st, the new lease date, she met me for a formal walkthrough at 9 a.m. She'd brought the itemized charges: cleaning, patching, the broken blinds, the closet hardware, trash removal. I braced myself. I'd paid the whole deposit at move-in because my roommate didn't have it. The landlord turned the page and slid a copy to me. My name was on the line where refund lives. "All of hers is going to collections," she said. "Yours is applied to your new lease. Consider it a loyalty discount." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. We signed. She handed me the new keys. That was it. If you think the story ended tidy there, I did, too. Then on November 3rd, a package showed up addressed to him. Big box, heavy. I printed "no longer at this address" on a neon post-it and stuck it on top, left it by the door for the mail carrier. 30 minutes later, his SUV rolled by slow, like a shark. He pulled up so close his mirror kissed my hedge. He got out and went straight for the box. I stepped out and told him, through the screen, that he'd been trespassed and needed to stay off the property. He held up the box like a shield and said the sidewalk was public. I didn't argue. I kept the screen between us and called the landlord. She walked over, didn't say a word, and pointed to the paper with his name on it posted by the door. He backed up, muttered something about mail fraud, and left. 2 nights after that, the garage light clicked on by itself at 1:12 a.m. It's a motion sensor. I don't know if it was a raccoon or a person, but the old feeling tried to crawl back up my spine. I lay there, listening to my house settle. I got up and checked that the deadbolts were turned, that the window latches were engaged, that the new code on the keypad still read, "Mine." The quiet is loud in a different way now. I find myself narrating small domestic victories: the same mug in the dish rack 2 mornings in a row, a towel that stays on its hook, a bathroom counter that's just a bathroom counter, the landlord's lemon tree has fruit, and the first time I took one, I had the stupid urge to write my name on it like a kid at summer camp so no one else would claim it. I sliced it into a glass of water and felt, for the first time in months, like I live here. I'm not under any illusions that she'll pay anything she owes. I don't know where they are, maybe at his friend's place, maybe in the SUV, maybe with someone else who doesn't know better yet. There are still little ghosts of them that pop up, a bobby pin in a drawer, a stray sock under the dryer that isn't mine. I toss them in the trash and keep moving. This morning I woke up before my alarm, made coffee, opened the back door, and let the cold air in. The house didn't smell like weed, or stale beer, or last night's fried something. It smelled like my laundry detergent because I remembered to take the cap off and leave it on the dryer again, a petty habit I picked up to keep it from being borrowed. The sunlight came in through the kitchen window and landed on a floor I didn't mop for someone else. It landed, for once, on just me. Update 3. The first weird thing was the mail. A white postcard from USPS with his name on it, change of address confirmation, to my house. I stood in my kitchen with that card like it was a live wire. I took it to the post office on my lunch break and slid it under the glass to a woman with glitter on her eyelids. She looked at it, looked at me, and said, "Nope," and stamped something with a satisfying thunk. "We see this," she added, like an apology and a sigh at the same time. I walked out with a bright red note from my mailbox and a file number I wrote on the inside of my wrist. The second weird thing was a man at my door with a manila envelope and a law firm tie. He asked for the boyfriend by full name like we were at a roll call. I told him he doesn't live here and pointed with my elbow at the paper with his no trespass order posted eye level on the door. The process server smiled with his mouth but not his eyes, handed me a card, and said, "If you see him, tell him he's being sued by a rim shop." He sounded bored. His pen had flames on it. Then the boxes started coming. Big, heavy ones, not from the usual places. One was anonymous brown with plastic straps cinched tight. I wrote "not at this address" in heavy black marker and left it by the door for the carrier like I always do. 30 minutes later, his SUV drifted by slow enough to make the leaves on the lemon tree shiver. He parked half in the street, half in my hedge, and sat there with the engine running, eyes fixed on the porch. I didn't go outside. I texted the landlord one word again, "Mailbox." She sent back, "I see him." Her upstairs blinds flexed and then went still. We let him look. He got out, adjusted his slides, and stood with one foot on my sidewalk and one on my walkway like a child playing hot lava. He read the notice with his own name on it, his name, his letters, his warning. He pulled his hood up like that made him invisible and reached for the box anyway. His hand crossed the line. The landlord was already on the phone. He saw my camera pointed at the porch and tried to pivot it with 2 fingers like it was a potted plant. I said through the closed door, "You step on this porch and you go to jail." He called me something inventive and then tried to lecture me about federal mail statutes through the screen. He has a way of saying rights like it's a password. I didn't bite. I just watched his eyes go wide when 2 squad cars rolled up nose to nose like something choreographed and a third unmarked slid in behind him. It went exactly the way it should and also the way it never does. Polite voices. Hands visible. He tried to do the sidewalk math with the officers and they did not do math with him. They asked him for ID. He did not have ID. One officer tapped the name on the order posted on my door with his pen. Another read something into his shoulder mic. You could hear the air go out of him when they said the word warrant. It came from somewhere else, another city, something about failure to appear. He tried to make it into a debate on the First Amendment. They made it into bracelets. He yelled her name when they put him in the back. That was the only time I heard it that day. The landlord and I listened from my porch in the exact positions we had used to hand out candy, like we were expecting pirates instead of this. After they left, she sat next to me and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since June. "I hate being right," she said. The lemon tree flicked shadows on the pathway where his mirror had kissed it. An hour later, she called me from a number I didn't have saved. I let it go to voicemail and listened to it twice. It started as screaming and slid into begging halfway through the first minute. She said I'd put him in jail on purpose, like I'd conjure the warrant with a Ouija board. She said if I had any heart, I'd tell the cops he lives there so he could use the address for bail and probation. I sat on my floor with my back to the dishwasher and recorded a new voicemail message for myself. In my head, I don't save people who throw rocks through my windows and call it rain. That night I slept with the window cracked and the fan on. The house smelled like cold and soap. At 2:03 a.m., someone knocked 3 times, neat as a metronome. Not him. A woman. Her voice was small and already broken. "I'm sorry," she said through the door. "I need the charger behind the dresser." The words sounded like something she'd practiced into a mirror and hated every time. I pressed my cheek to the door and said, "You'll get everything on a civil standby at noon tomorrow. No exceptions." She didn't argue. I watched her walk down the path and away, shoulders in a shiver she wasn't trying to hide. Noon came with 2 officers and a plastic tub. She boxed the last of what she could claim, a handful of makeup, a tangle of costume jewelry that looked like confetti, that charger. She didn't look at the holes where closet brackets used to be. She didn't touch the foundation smear on the bathroom counter with its edge like a continent. She glanced at the lemon tree on her way out like it had betrayed her. After that, it got quiet in a new way. An envelope addressed to him from the DMV showed up and I wrote "not at this address" with more confidence than I had the week before. The process server came back once and I directed him to the police station if he wanted to try his luck there. The postal carrier started leaving my packages tucked under the planter in a new way that made us both feel like a team. I learned the noise my deadbolt makes when it's happy. I took a ladder and reset the bent blinds myself. I went to the hardware store and bought closet brackets with my own money and put the rod back in the empty room, mostly because I could. I put a spare towel in there that matches nothing else in my house. A small flag to mark a safe place. Last night, I turned all the lights off and stood in the hallway. The house has a different heartbeat now. I can hear my neighbor's dishwasher when mine is quiet. I can hear the lemon tree bump the window when the wind comes up the alley. I can hear the difference between a person on the sidewalk and a cat. My phone lit up at 9:17 with a text from an unknown number, a grainy picture of a jail phone and a message that read, "He says tell the landlord he's coming back for his TV. He never brought a TV here." I set the phone face down and let the silence close over it. This morning, I squeezed a lemon into a glass of water with my name written on it in my own head and drank it on the porch in the cold. A kid on a scooter went past and his dad jogged behind him, calling out, "Watch your corners, like all danger is just geometry." The new keys were heavy in my pocket. The porch light clicked off because the sun was finally high enough. I went inside and locked my door and it sounded like a period at the end of a sentence I wrote myself. Update 4. The knock came at 6:11 a.m., the kind that doesn't apologize for the hour. 2 people in plain windbreakers and sensible shoes, badges clipped to lanyards. Pre-trial services. They said his name with the careful cadence of people who have to spell it a lot. I kept the chain on and pointed at the paper with his no trespass order on the door like I was reading from a script. The woman took a small step back, not spooked, just respectful. "He tried to list this as his residence," she said. "We just need to verify." The word verify sat between us like a third person. I told them he didn't live here. I told them about the order. The man wrote my address and underlined something, twice. He asked if I wanted to be notified of his release and I said yes with an honesty that surprised me. He gave me a card with a hotline and an acronym that sounded like a boat. They didn't come inside. They didn't make it a big deal. But when the door shut, I realized I'd been holding my breath since the second knock. At 3:04 in the afternoon, a white city truck nosed up to the curb like it knew a secret. Code enforcement. Anonymous complaint. Unpermitted unit, possible illegal tenants, marijuana odors. He read it off a clipboard like the punchline of a joke he'd heard too many times. The landlord met him at the gate with her binder, permits in plastic sleeves, dates highlighted in pale green. He asked if he could have a look. The way you ask to pet a dog you can tell will say yes. We walked him through rooms that smelled like lemon peel and laundry soap. He peered at the service panel and nodded at the GFCI outlets in the kitchen like they were old friends. Weaponized complaints, he said on his way out, like he was handing us a diagnosis. Happens every day. He stuck a small fluorescent sticker on the inside of my screen door that said we were fine. It felt stupidly good. That night at 1:19 a.m., the universe sent the mechanical version of Deja Vu, a tow truck. You can hear them before you see them. Heavy chains talking to each other. A winch that sounds like a throat clearing. It idled under my window with the patience of a planet. The SUV was still half eating my head from the last slow drive-by and he was still in a holding cell with cinder block and fluorescent buzz. A man in a hoodie tapped on the glass of the driver's door with his knuckle, like the car could answer. The repo guy moved smooth and quick, straps like practice gestures. When the back lifted, hangers slid across the rear window like ironfish. A hoodie fell out and he kicked it back in with a boot that had oil on it. The lemon tree threw a shadow on the hood that looked like handwriting. He didn't look at me, but when he climbed into the cab, he saw my face in the window and flashed 2 fingers, not a salute, more like a "we're both awake" wave. The sound of the bumper clearing the curb was the same sound the U-Haul ramp made when it scraped months ago. Different kind of exhale. I slept. At the crack of a workday, a delivery driver with a dolly and a box taller than both of us stopped at my porch. A TV. Addressed to him. Brand name with a vowel pulled out like a squeal, I explained. He nodded like word problems were his hobby and wheeled it back down the steps. 30 minutes later, a sedan rolled up and a man I'd never seen knocked and said he was here for the Marketplace TV. He had cash folded small in his palm. I told him the seller was in jail. He looked at me like I'd told him the ocean was closed. He checked the address in his messages and showed me, my street, my number, my house in a blurry screenshot with my porch light on. I told him I was sorry. He took a picture of the no trespass order and said, "That's wild," like we were commenting on the weather. He left. 3 pizzas and 1 unsolicited plumber later, I put a note on the gate that said, "Not a pickup location," with a smiley face that looked tired. The smiley helped. My phone woke me at 5:02 a.m. with a recorded voice that said he had been released. The acronym BOAT has a calm captain. It says the date, the time, the facility, like a bedtime story for nervous systems. I lay there and counted the seconds between my heartbeats and the nudge of the lemon tree against the window. The landlord texted me a single lemon emoji and then, coffee? We sat with our mugs and watched the street think about itself. At 9:30, a silver car pulled up with the wrong plates. She got out. She had a new jacket and an old face. She didn't touch the gate. She asked if she could get his TV. I laughed once, sharp enough to cut my lip, and then it wasn't funny. I told her there was no TV. She said he said, like that was a contract. The landlord stepped out with her clipboard and her quiet If you want anything, you do it by the book, she said, and pointed with her eyes at the officers you call, the stand by you request, the way you walk through a door with 2 witnesses and take exactly what you can claim with receipts. The ex-roommate looked at me like I was a stranger and then like I was a mirror. He's going to come here, she said, like a threat and a confession. He's going to do what he always does. I said nothing. She stared at the lemon tree like it was choosing sides. When she left, I locked the door and it felt like putting a lid on a pot that had finally stopped boiling. In the afternoon, the process server came back in a tie with tiny anchors. Rim shop guy again, he said, almost cheerfully. He asked if he could leave the papers on the porch. I told him to give them to the police station like we discussed last time, and he flipped his pen with a flourish, as if applauding my memory. At 7:12 p.m., my power flickered. The kitchen light went out and came back like it had changed its mind. An email pinged my phone, utility account update. A name that wasn't mine had tried to change the service address. The box with the checkbox for I am authorized had been pressed by someone with a very generous sense of humor. I called. I gave them the file number I now keep on the inside of my skull. The woman on the line said, "We see this," with that same apology sigh the postal worker had, and put a block on my account so hard it felt like a padlock clicked through my screen. The landlord added a clause to our little war binder: no change to any utility without the owner and tenant on a 3-way call, passwords like nonsense words a child would invent. At 10:11 p.m., a cruiser idled at the curb. New guy. He knocked. He said there had been a welfare check request for a resident named his name. He said the caller claimed he lived here and wasn't answering his phone and might be in medical distress. The officer's eyebrows did a small sympathetic dance when he saw the no trespass order with the same name on it. He said, "I'll mark it," and it sounded like a blessing. He stood on the porch for a minute longer than necessary and told me about the time he went to 3 different addresses in one night for a guy who was in county the whole time, because a girlfriend couldn't let quiet exist without an echo. "You're doing everything right," he said in that neutral way cops say things when they don't want to inflame anything. He left. The house sat down around me. 2 days later, I went to the courthouse because paper likes company. Small claims, first floor. Fluorescent lights, plastic chairs that make everyone the same height. The landlord had a stack that made mine look like a pamphlet. We were there for deposit math and repair math and the kind of math you do when someone takes closet brackets and leaves a smear of foundation like a petroglyph. She didn't show. He didn't either. The clerk stamped things with emotion like a metronome and said words like default and judgment and collections, and I felt something unwind in my chest I didn't know I'd tied. On the way home, I bought a ridiculous plant that looks like a green fireworks explosion and put it in the empty room on the shelf where a TV isn't. It makes its own shade. Tonight, the house smells like the lemon bars I made badly on purpose, sugar crusted too hard at the edges. The oven ticks as it cools. The deadbolt sighs when I turn it. The lemon tree taps the window in Morse I pretend to understand. My phone is dark on the counter. The closet rod in the spare room holds a single hanger I bought new, cheap chrome catching the hallway light. It's not waiting for anyone. It's just there. I pour water into a glass and squeeze a slice of the landlord's lemon into it and drink it standing in my kitchen like a person who lives in a place that belongs to her. The porch light clicks off when the timer says so, no debate. I listen to the house breathe.